Okay, thanks very much for joining this session. My name is Victoria. I'm the head of operations for Share the Meal. This is a UN charity app, and I want to tell you about Share the Meal today. I want to start off with addressing the problem that we're trying to solve, global hunger. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how we got to where we are right now, how did we get started, how did we get off the ground, and lastly, I'm losing it already. And lastly, I want to show you how we want to scale Share the Meal, so how we want to move this forward and reach even more people than we are today. So let's start with the problem. You might be aware of global hunger. We see pictures of hungry children in the media every day. In fact, today there are still 795 million hungry people in the world. So that means that 1 in 9 people go to bed hungry each night. Now for us, this really seems unimaginable. We all have more than enough to eat. We can just go out and buy something. But in fact, there are so many people who do go hungry on a regular basis. The vast majority of these people, as you can imagine, live in developing countries where the problem is especially bad. And as you probably also know, children are one of the most vulnerable groups. Children and women. For children, it's the case is that 1 in 4 children are actually stunted, so that means that they don't achieve the right height for their age group. Then also, if children don't get the right nutrition at the right time in the first 1,000 days of their lives, then that means that they are really have irreversible damages. They can never catch up on this, both in terms of their mental development and their physical development. So really, it's crucial that we intervene as early as possible in a child's life and do something to help. At the same time, the world is currently facing the highest number of emergencies it's ever encountered. We all know about the Syrian crisis, the crisis in Yemen, the famine in South Sudan. There are really crises all over the world, and humanitarian organizations are struggling to keep up with this and to help people, to help these people in need. Now, there is one good side to this, though. The number of hungry people has decreased. So since the 1990s, there are 250 million less people that go hungry, but still, it's 795 million people. We shouldn't really have to be doing this. You might know about the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The goals aim to end extreme poverty by 2030. So not too long from now, actually. The goals center around climate action, food, poverty, gender equality, and the one that we're trying to address is, of course, ending hunger. But if we continue at the rate that we're doing at the moment, we're not going to make it. We will only reach zero hunger by 2050. And that to us is something that is unimaginable, and we need to do something about it. So that means we need to find new ideas, we need to do something different. And the World Food Programme, which is the mother organization for Share the Meal, we're an initiative of the World Food Programme, came to the realization fairly early on that we would need to have innovative ideas. That's a very general term, but that was the idea. We need to try something different. We need to do something different. And so the World Food Programme established together with the German government an innovation accelerator. The innovation accelerator is in Munich. And the idea is to accelerate ideas from within the organization, but also external ideas. Some of the best ideas might be outside of the organization and not with people who've been doing the same kind of thing for many years. And so these ideas cover really all steps in the humanitarian chain. They might be assessing the need earlier on, for example, by collecting data from mobile data. Or they might be using blockchain technology to make payments to recipients more secure, more transparent. There's also a project on hydroponics, so growing food without actually having any soil. And then there's Share the Meal, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So really the opportunity for Share the Meal comes from the fact that there are as many times smartphone users as there are hungry children in the world. We all know we use smartphones for lots of things. We use them to work, we also use them to play, we use them to take selfies, everything really. And what we wanted to do is to create a way to do good with the phone, so that you're not just doing it for your own benefit, having fun, but also doing something good. Now, did you know that it costs only 40 cents to feed a hungry child for one day? Probably not, right? We all imagine it would be much more expensive, because what we can buy with 40 cents is minimal. Maybe an apple, a bread roll, maybe a bottle of water, but that's it. But in fact, in a developing country, you can feed a child for 1 full day with this amount. All costs included, from the food to the transaction costs, the monitoring costs, the staff, everything in. And so what we wanted to do is to connect the hungry children with the smartphone users in the world. And in effect, this is using the idea of crowdfunding to do good. Now, how does Share the Meal work? This is the app. You can download it from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. It's super easy, and that's exactly how it's meant to be. We want to make it as easy as possible to do good. Now, once you've downloaded the app, you can see this child, and this child is a child in Yemen. So what we do in the app is we describe a specific target that we're working on. This sets us apart from other organizations, other non-profit organizations or charities, where you might be donating to a worldwide fund. That can also have its advantages. But what we want to do is really to say, this is the country you're helping in, and you can track the impact, and you can see what you're doing there. You can follow our progress together. And so right now, we're fundraising for children in Yemen. Yemen is really on the border of a famine. There's a big conflict there, an ongoing crisis, and we want to do something to avert this. So we're trying to raise 1 million meals for children in Yemen. And our other campaign, because you can also choose where you want to give, is for children in Lebanon, for Syrian refugee children who have fled there, and for children from Lebanon who are vulnerable because the refugee crisis has actually put a huge burden on the Lebanese society too. So if you then want to share a meal, you tap the yellow button, and then you get to this screen, and you can select how many meals you want to share. So as I said, 40 cents, that's what it costs for 1 day. So that's really the low threshold. You can start sharing a meal, and all it costs is 40 cents. But you can also give more. And we see that actually many of our users do give more. So our average donation is actually much, much higher than the 40 cents. And this for us is a bit of a surprise, because we'd initially thought, okay, everyone's just going to give 40 cents. But no, people really do want to do good, and they want to help, and they're willing to give more than just small change for it. We also have a monthly selection, so you can choose to give monthly to make it even easier. And we have a customizable button where you can give up to 20 years worth of meals, and people do that too. So it's interesting to see it's not just the small donations, but people are also willing to use their smartphone to do really, really big donations. Then another difference that sets Share the Meal apart from other charities or other fundraising mechanisms is that we show a thank you message. So this is Fatima. She's 7 years old. She's a Syrian refugee. She fled with her family. She's been in Lebanon for most of her life. She hardly remembers anything about her home country. But together with the World Food Programme, we together can help her. Basically what happens is that you donate the 40 cents. They then get transferred to Lebanon, and that Fatima and her family then get a credit on an e-card and could go shopping with that. So they also have a bit of freedom, a bit of choice to go shopping and to really try and recreate their life that they know from home in this new country. And together we can help her, and we're doing that for 1 full year. So we want to help Fatima and 1,100 other children for a full year. The idea behind this thank you message is that we give greater transparency, and that we can show you really the impact, because we think that human stories matter, and we want to show people where they're doing good and whom they're helping. Now, what have we reached so far? We've got more than 13 million shared meals, so that's equal to 13 million daily rations for children in need. And if you think about it, more than $6 million US. We've got 830,000 users who have downloaded the app. And for us, this is really, it's an amazing sign that people want to do good and that they want to join a crowdfunding mechanism and want to help together. Now, we've done this without having really any marketing budget to speak of. We're a UN organization. In general, advertising for a charity is anyway difficult, and we haven't had any access to it. So what we've relied on is App Store promotions, a lot of media coverage that I'll get to in a minute, celebrities supporting us, endorsing us, and telling their followers how great this is, how they can do good, and also just social media, word of mouth. Users telling their friends about it, and we actively encourage that, because we think that's really the way to the answer to it, that we want to ensure that you think Share the Meal is great enough that you want to tell your friends about it. you can see here these bumps basically are when we've had a launch, when we've had good PR, when we've had an App Store feature, and that's really what drives the growth. But we want to make sure that it's not just that, but it's also you telling your friends about it. This is what we've been able to do with the 13 million meals that we've had shared. So we've really focused on countries of greatest need because we think that resonates best. You want to do good and you want to do it in a country that you have heard about. And so we fundraised for several countries affected by the Syrian refugee crisis. So both within Syria, in Lebanon, and in Jordan, where there are particularly a high number of refugees. We've also fundraised for school meals in Malawi. Malawi was affected by El Nino droughts, so the need was particularly high there, and many of these children were the children of farmers who had no crop or very little crop after the droughts. After that, we also fundraised for Cameroon. Cameroon is affected by the Lake Chad crisis. There are many refugees that are fleeing from Boko Haram, and these children had found a new place to live, were going to school, and we wanted to ensure that they could keep going to school. And right now, as I said, we're fundraising for Yemen to try and help avert a famine there, and for the children in Lebanon. What do people say about us? How does it work? What's our feedback? So we're really, really lucky to have really good feedback. I think what makes us as a team most happy, and especially our developers, is that we've got very good App Store reviews. And that, for an app, I think is the most important thing, that people talk about it well, that it works properly, and that has been the case. Then we've also had positive media mentions, so New York Times, CNN, and this for us is really crucial. It builds credibility. If you've read about it somewhere, then you generally think it's trustworthy. Now this is sort of, one side of it is luck, one side of it is sort of, it's just a good concept maybe, but it's also a lot of grit. It's really picking up the phone, doing the 15th cold call in a day, staying up nights and trying to call people, and it's cumbersome, but it does work. And we've really tried building relationships with journalists, and this is really important for us, and it's a lifeline. And last but not least, we have a number of awards that we've won, both for the concept and for the design of the app. And for us, this is also, it's just really cool. It's exciting. It's good news, and it's something that you can also tell the world about. Most recently, we won a Google Best Apps Award at Google I/O. So that's also sort of external acclaim is always nice. Yeah. Now, aside from this feedback, we've also realized that we want to draw more on our community to do good. We want to involve them more, and we want to give them an opportunity to work together. Before, you could only donate as an individual, but now we've created a function whereby you can donate as a team. This is one of the teams here. They're called Million Meals for Love, and it's actually a very nice story. It's a couple. They're of Indian descent, and they live in the States, Poonam and Nishkam, and they decided that they didn't want sort of the traditional Indian wedding that costs tens of thousands of dollars, but they'd instead give this money to charity. And they came across us and said, listen, we want to do this challenge. We want to give our own money, but we also want to get all of our friends, all of our family to join in, and we want to ask everyone else to do it too. And it was such a cute story. There was a video, and they told their story, and there were nice pictures. And in fact, we now have 4,000 members in this team, and together they've shared more than 330,000 meals. So it's really sort of, if you know a story, if you do it together as a team, it can work. And that's exactly what we want to work on and what we want to push forward a little bit more. So we also have this idea of challenges, and we think maybe people want to donate for their birthday, or maybe they want to do it for Christmas. And that's what we're trying to do with this function. Now, who is using the app? Our main assumption at the beginning, before we launched the app, was that we would hopefully reach millennials. Now, as you can see here, we've actually managed to do that. Millennials make up roughly 1/3 of our user base. And the next biggest one is the 34 to 45 afterwards. So for us, this is a really good proof that actually this concept does appeal to millennials. And it's also important because we're trying to develop a new fundraising mechanism when we're actually reaching a generation that's not usually engaged in fundraising or in charitable actions. If you look at sort of the traditional donor profile of Save the Children, UNICEF, and the World Food Programme, they tend to be 50 plus, overwhelmingly female. And what we're trying to do is get this new generation on board and give them a way to do good too. And if that happens to be mobile, fair enough. If that's where you are, then we'll come there. Now, what do we want to do in the future? As I've said, and as you can probably see from this too, there's still a lot of potential. We really think that we can do more with Share the Meal, that we can reach even more people and really do make a tangible contribution to the fight against hunger. The first thing is that currently we are overwhelmingly German. We did a pilot launch in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and actually, sorry, keeps running off. And so, in fact, 50% of our donations come from Germany, and 30% of our donors are in Germany. And really, we think if we can recreate this in other countries, we could actually reach many more people. So what we're trying to do is see if we can increase our market penetration in other countries and ultimately acquire more donors. Our second strongest country is the US, notoriously difficult market to enter, but we're trying to do it, and we really think that there's a particularly big interest to do good there, so we should be able to do that. And how do we want to get this better geographical distribution? There's two angles, really. One is a tech angle, and the other one is marketing. And so first, on the tech ideas, we have two main projects we're working on. The first one, we've had some really, really great help from Facebook, and we came up with this idea that we want to hack the foodie movement, the food porn idea. So many of us take pictures of our food. I did this morning. I had a nice breakfast, I took a picture, and we all do that. There's nothing wrong with it. But maybe we can also use this idea and do good with it. So what we want to do is we want to launch a feature where you can take a picture, post it, and at the same time you will donate 40 cents and feed a child for 1 day. So you're linking sort of your own enjoyment with helping someone else. And this is something that we're working on, and we're planning to launch in August of this year, and hoping to have sort of a campaign around it, because we think we all know it. It's really something entirely normal. We just need to get it into the app and make other people aware of it. So that's feature number one. And then the other thing we're working on is called peer-to-peer giving. Does anyone know what peer-to-peer giving is? No? Peer-to-peer, the idea is that you establish a human connection between the donor and the recipient. So I said with Share the Meal, you already sort of know where it's going. You know a country, you know a sample child, but this takes it one step further. So here, when you make a donation, you will be matched with a recipient. You will know the name of the person, you will see a picture of the person, and you will know that your money is going to help this specific person or this family. And so then, once the donation has arrived there, and the person, for example, if it goes onto an e-card and they can go shopping with it, you will get a notification saying, Fatima has now gone shopping with this card, they've been able to buy oil, grains, and so on. And then you might even know what they've cooked with it, because you get additional information. And so really, you will have increased transparency, you will have more information, and you will better understand the impact of your donation. The reason why historically organizations have shied back from this is because it can be prohibitively expensive. If you really think about all the information you have to collect, then you have to pass it back to the donor. It can be very expensive. But what we want to do is we want to use a system that's already in place, basically a data management system that the World Food Programme already uses. And we just want to get this data and use it for the benefit of the donor. And so that kind of solves this conundrum, and it makes it doable, and doable at scale without causing too high costs. So we hope to launch this within sort of the last quarter of the year, because we think that that would be appealing, especially to people who are willing to donate more, who want to support people on a more regular basis. In terms of marketing, what do we want to do? Now, the first thing is, I said we haven't really had access to paid marketing, and we've relied very much on pro bono support. Now, what we'd like to do, and what every other app actually does, of course, is paid user acquisition. So what we want to do is we want to have, for example, a Facebook ad like this one. You're scrolling through your timeline. You might have recommendations for clothes shops, other apps, whatever. We feel that Share the Meal could also be there. You would see an ad like this, Share the Meal, feed a hungry child today. And you could install the app and ready to go. We've tried this, we've been experimenting, and in fact we've seen that we could buy an install for less than $3. If we think about the lifetime value of a donor, that makes complete sense. However, slide caveat, this is a problem, of course, for an organization that's not used to spending money on marketing. So we're not quite sure yet where this is going to take us, but we would really like to explore this angle. Because we think, although it's an investment now, ultimately it will pay off. So we'll see where that goes. And then the last idea is that we set up partnerships with corporates or with other players in the mobile sphere. And here basically the idea is that we could have a checkout integration. So for example, if you're ordering your own food, I mean on average in Western Europe you probably spend at least 10 euros on buying your own food. Why don't you just purchase on top of that a meal for someone else? So you share the meal while you're ordering your own food. That's sort of the most obvious integration, but there's lots of other scenarios we can think of. So for example, you have a subscription on Spotify. You might as well sponsor someone else at the same time. There's really lots of things where we pay money, but we could just add this on. So a checkout integration is one scenario, or a cooperation of another thing. But what we'd really like to do is engage corporates, engage users of other apps, and thereby grow the user base and ultimately raise more money for the fight against hunger. Now, those are kind of the different puzzle pieces. We really hope they'll come together so that we can scale this and raise more money, but it remains to be seen. So, yeah, that's the journey for Share the Meal. Thank you. Do you have any questions? I think.
Very interesting app.
Yeah, no, sorry, can you repeat?
Very interesting app.
Thank you.
2 questions. How do you pick the children? And how do you make sure that the donation goes to the children or reaches the children?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, we don't pick children, we pick a country where we want to help. We generally go by the country, sorry, I'm going to take these off. We generally go by countries that have a great need. So we really try to find countries that are in the public light at the moment, for example, Yemen. And we think that that is something that works well with our users and where there's a great need. Yemen is also underfunded because the World Food Programme relies completely on voluntary donations. So there's basically no budget, in contrast to other UN organizations. And so that they're chronically underfunded, there's never enough, and there's a hole there that we would like to fill with our help. So that's how we how we choose the country. And in terms of getting it there, we rely on the organizational structure of the World Food Programme, both to provide the meals and to monitor and track it. The World Food Programme is the biggest organization fighting hunger, and it's renowned and there's processes in place. So for us, it's lucky that we can basically just transfer the funds and we know they're arriving there because the whole process is already there. If we had to build the whole infrastructure ourselves, we wouldn't be able to do it for this price. Did you have another one?
But do you really give it to one certain child? Like you said, the thing with one person supporting one child. Is that possible?
So that's possible. Sorry. Moving forward, that will be possible. At the moment, the money goes to one project. So we find a project that we think is worthy, is in need, and then the money is transferred to that project. So all the children in that project will benefit from it. But in future, it will be a specific individual that you will be supporting.
Okay. I can't really believe it. It's.
You can't believe.
Yeah.
Basically, the World Food Programme has this system in place. It's called SCOPE. It's a data management system, and not in every country where the World Food Programme works, but in many countries, basically, all the recipients are tracked. I mean, it's for data management. It's not used externally at the moment. But basically, you know this is person XYZ. He is in this project. He receives this amount of money per month. And so we can then track when this money has gotten there and when he's used the money.
And what if he falls out of the program?
In that case, we'll have to find a solution and assign a different one.
Okay.
But in general, as sad as it is in these situations, that doesn't generally happen. I mean, we're talking about Yemen, South Sudan, Syrian refugee crisis. The number is increasing rather than decreasing, sadly.
And another question, what's the payment method and how did you choose it?
We have 2 payment methods at the moment. Actually, 4, but 2 don't work here. So at the moment in Europe, you can pay with credit card and with PayPal. And for us, these are the most popular ones. There are also other ones, but these to us are sort of the most used ones. In the States, we also have Google Pay and Apple Pay. And this, of course, is something that we'd like to do in the future, but it's not that easy because Google and Apple don't allow charitable payments with their in-app billing at the moment. So ultimately, the goal would be to have in-app billing, full in-app billing, just like you use for every other app, but that's just not possible at the moment. But we hope that that can be resolved, because what we do see is that even though you just have to enter your payment information once, and it's actually a really quick process, it takes about 30 seconds, people do drop off there. It's just, I don't have my credit card, I don't have my login, whatever, and then they forget about the app. And so we think that when people really, they just need to sign in, that's it, then it would be even easier. So we really are exploring this avenue of payments because it's crucial, and it's something that we're not where we are yet, where we want to be.
Hi. Do you know, you told us about the extra payment. If we buy a meal for $10, why don't just pay 40 cents more to get a meal for a girl in Cameroon? Mm-hmm. I just thought, do you know the payment when you buy a ticket at the Flixbus website? There's always a button for compensate the CO2 emission of your journey with another 70-cent pay. What would you think about the idea to do a cooperation with Lieferando.at or Lieferservice.at or whatever, with an extra button for your $10 pay, spend 50 cents more to feed a child in Cameroon? Because I like your idea, but in the real life, I don't think if it really works, because if I buy a burger at McDonald's, I don't immediately think at buying another meal for a girl in Cameroon on my app. But in this situation on the website of Lieferando.at or whatever, it would be clearly and to be seen, and it would be simple to donate. And what would you think about this idea?
That's exactly what we'd like to do. That is sort of the ideal scenario. We're working on finding partners. It's not always that easy because Lieferando too has they don't want people to drop off or to forget about it, and so sort of actually having a button in front saying tick this and give another 40 cents, for them it's a big step, and so we really want to convince more and more people, more and more companies to do this, but we need sort of one big case to show that this works and that it doesn't annoy their customers, because they're not going to do it then. So for us this would be really important because we think we can grow, but it would be far more attractive if we could actually reach the users of other services, of other apps. So absolutely, yeah.
How would you plan a personalization when scaling it? Because I think, you have for the different countries, you have certain kids with their stories, like you said, we're talking about Fatima, but how is this supposed to work when you scale it? Because, I don't know, when it's like thousands of kids, they each telling a different story, so how is this supposed to work?
So if we have the peer-to-peer giving angle, then you wouldn't have the story anymore. Then basically you would have data that's collected anyway that we would just repurpose for this use. So basically we already collect the data. Fatima's parents get X dollars to go shopping. They go shopping on this day and they buy this basket. We know that in many countries. We already know they're buying sort of this kind of food stuff, these food groups, and we would really repackage this information and then provide it. So it's really an information that's available in mass, and then we just use it in the app. The stories in that way would not be there because you're right, it's impossible. That would completely blow the costs through the roof, and we can't do that. But there might also be two different ways of doing it. Maybe we still have this way and we add the other one on top. We're really not sure yet there. We're not that far yet, but we'll see where it takes us.
What are the operational costs of this application and the IT infrastructure behind it?
So what's important to note is that we don't touch the funds that are raised at the moment. The funds are transferred in total to the World Food Programme and then to the project that we've been fundraising for. And we're financed by an innovations grant. So we're still considered innovation. We've been around for 2 years. That's separate, but the World Food Programme actually has one of the lowest operational costs compared to other organizations. So the World Food Programme aspires that they have costs below 10%. And so overall, that's what's achieved. And this is important to us, and we see that it's really important to our donors, because people, increasingly people compare, rightly so, how much of their buck really sort of has an impact, and we want to make sure that it's as high as possible. Which is also why it's so important for us to say that this peer-to-peer giving doesn't drive costs through the roof, but actually still maintains low costs because we're using what's already there.
And what would be a target number of donated meals per day, where you say, okay, this should be possible within the next 2 years, for example?
Per day is a bit difficult, but ideally we'd really like to do an additional sort of 10 in this year, 10 million. So starting at the beginning of the year, we've already done 3. Perfect. Anyone else? No? Thank you very much for coming.